June 25, 2009, Los Angeles, California, 2:26 p.m. The king of pop was gone. Michael Joseph Jackson, the man who had moonwalked into immortality, who had broken every record imaginable, who had inspired millions across the globe, was dead at 50. Within hours, the world was in mourning. Fans gathered outside his home, outside hospitals, in city squares across continents. But behind the grief, questions began to emerge. Dark, troubling questions about what had really happened in those final days. This isn't a story about conspiracy theories or wild speculation. This is the true story behind Michael Jackson's death. A story of fame's crushing weight, of medical ethics abandoned, and of a system that failed one of the most beloved artists in human history. The dark secret wasn't hidden in shadows, it was hiding in plain sight. To understand Michael Jackson's death, we must first understand the extraordinary life that preceded it. Michael Jackson wasn't just an entertainer, he was a phenomenon. From his debut with the Jackson 5 at age 5 to his solo dominance in the 1980s, he had lived his entire life under the unforgiving spotlight of global fame. The numbers tell only part of the story. Over 350 million records sold worldwide. 13 Grammy Awards, the best-selling album of all time with Thriller. But statistics can't capture what Michael Jackson meant to popular culture, how he shattered racial barriers, revolutionized music videos, and created dance moves that became universal language. Yet by 2009, the king of pop had become something else entirely. A reclusive figure, weathered by decades of intense scrutiny, legal battles, and personal struggles that had played out on the world stage. The man who once commanded stadiums with effortless grace was now 50 years old, carrying the weight of a lifetime spent in the public eye. His finances were strained, his reputation had been tarnished by allegations and court cases, and most crucially, his health was deteriorating in ways the public couldn't see. By 2009, Michael Jackson was preparing for what he hoped would be his triumphant return, a series of concerts in London that would remind the world why he was called the King of Pop. Instead, those concerts would become the backdrop for one of entertainment history's most tragic endings. March 2009. Michael Jackson stood before a crowd of reporters and announced his comeback. This is it, a series of 50 concerts at London's O2 Arena that would serve as his farewell to performing. For Michael, these concerts represented more than just a return to the stage. They were his financial salvation. Years of legal battles, settlements, and lavish spending had left him hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. The This Is It tour would generate enough revenue to secure his children's future and restore his financial stability. But those who worked closely with Michael during rehearsals began to notice troubling signs. The man who had once been known for his perfectionism and boundless energy seemed different, thin, fragile, sometimes confused or disoriented. Rehearsal footage later revealed what those around him were witnessing: a performer struggling to recapture his former vitality. While Michael could still deliver moments of his old magic, the sustained energy that had defined his career seemed to be fading. Behind the scenes, Michael was fighting battles that the public couldn't see. The pressure to deliver a flawless comeback performance. The physical demands of complex choreography on a 50-year-old body that had endured decades of stress. And most dangerously of all, a growing dependence on powerful medications to cope with the pain, anxiety, and sleeplessness that had become his constant companions. The stage was being set for tragedy, but not in the way anyone anticipated. To understand what killed Michael Jackson, we must understand his relationship with sleep, or rather, his complete inability to achieve it naturally. For years, Michael had suffered from chronic insomnia. The condition wasn't simply difficulty falling asleep. It was a complete disruption of his natural sleep cycles that left him exhausted, anxious, and unable to function without pharmaceutical assistance. The insomnia had multiple sources. Decades of grueling tour schedules had disrupted his circadian rhythms. The constant stress of media scrutiny had created anxiety that made relaxation impossible. Physical pain from old injuries and the demands of performance had created a cycle where sleep brought no relief. Over time, Michael had developed relationships with various doctors who prescribed increasingly powerful sleep aids. What began as legitimate medical treatment for a real condition gradually evolved into something far more dangerous, a complex cocktail of medications that required careful monitoring and expert medical oversight. By 2009, Michael's medication regimen included powerful painkillers, anti-anxiety drugs, and sedatives. But these conventional medications were no longer providing the deep, restorative sleep he desperately needed. That's when someone suggested a solution that would prove fatal. Propofol, a powerful anesthetic never intended for sleep therapy, administered in a home setting without proper medical equipment or training. The king of pop was about to place his life in the hands of a doctor whose judgment would prove catastrophically flawed. Dr. Conrad Murray wasn't a quack or a street dealer. He was a licensed cardiologist with medical degrees from reputable institutions, practicing medicine in Texas and Nevada. Yet his decisions in Michael Jackson's final months would lead to one of the most notorious cases of medical malpractice in history. Murray had financial troubles of his own. His medical practices were struggling, and he owed substantial amounts in child support and business debts. When Michael Jackson's representatives offered him $150,000 per month to serve as the singer's personal physician, it must have seemed like salvation. What Murray agreed to do, however, went far beyond standard medical practice. Michael had specifically requested propofol, a powerful anesthetic used in operating rooms, to help him sleep. Known in medical circles as milk of sleep for its milky white appearance, propofol is never used for insomnia treatment. Propofol essentially puts patients into a medically induced coma. It requires constant monitoring, immediate access to resuscitation equipment, and administration only by trained anesthesiologists in controlled environments. Using it in a home setting for sleep was not just unconventional, it was incredibly dangerous. Murray later claimed he tried to wean Michael off propofol, but the pressure from his patient and employer was immense. Michael was paying Murray's salary. The "This Is It" concerts were approaching. The pressure to keep the star functional and sleeping was overwhelming. For weeks, Murray administered propofol in Michael's bedroom, monitoring him through the night, helping him achieve the deep unconsciousness he craved. It was a medical tightrope walk that could only end one way. June 24, 2009. Michael Jackson's Holmby Hills mansion, a night that would change everything. According to Dr. Murray's later testimony, Michael was unusually agitated that night. The approaching rehearsals, the pressure of the comeback tour, and his chronic insomnia had created a perfect storm of anxiety and exhaustion. Murray administered various medications throughout the night: Valium at 1:30 a.m., lorazepam at 2 a.m., more Valium at 3 a.m. Nothing was working. Michael remained awake, increasingly desperate for sleep. At approximately 10:40 a.m. on June 25th, after hours of failed attempts with other medications, Murray made the decision that would haunt him forever. He administered a dose of propofol to help Michael sleep. What happened next remains the subject of legal and medical debate. Murray claimed he left the room to make phone calls. Security footage and phone records would later show he was absent from Michael's bedside for far longer than the continuous monitoring propofol requires. When Murray returned, he found Michael Jackson unresponsive, no pulse, not breathing. The king of pop was in cardiac arrest. What followed was a chaotic attempt at resuscitation. Murray performed CPR on a bed, ineffective for proper chest compressions. He delayed calling 911. He allegedly removed evidence from the scene. Precious minutes were lost while Michael's brain was deprived of oxygen. By the time paramedics arrived and transported Michael to UCLA Medical Center, it was too late. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson was pronounced dead. The autopsy results revealed the dark secret that had been hidden behind Michael Jackson's public persona. A man trapped in a deadly cycle of pharmaceutical dependence, enabled by a medical system that had failed him completely. The official cause of death was acute propofol intoxication, combined with the effects of multiple other medications found in his system. But this clinical language obscures a more disturbing truth. Michael Jackson had essentially been using a surgical anesthetic as a sleeping pill for months, possibly years. The real dark secret was not a conspiracy. It was the failure of multiple systems that should have protected him. Medical professionals who prioritized payment over patient safety, an entertainment industry that demanded perfection regardless of human cost, a legal system that enabled doctor shopping and prescription abuse. Dr. Murray was eventually convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison. But his conviction couldn't answer the deeper questions. How had the medical system failed so completely? Why had no one intervened earlier? How had someone with unlimited resources received such dangerously inadequate medical care? Michael's death exposed the dark underbelly of celebrity medicine, a world where wealthy patients could find doctors willing to provide dangerous treatments, where normal medical safeguards were bypassed, where the phrase, "the customer is always right," had invaded medical practice with deadly consequences. The darkest secret of all was that Michael Jackson's death was entirely preventable. He died not from any rare disease or unavoidable medical condition, but from medical negligence and a healthcare system that had forgotten its fundamental obligation. First, do no harm. But to truly understand the circumstances that led to Michael's death, we must examine the unique pressures that shaped his final years. Pressures that few human beings could comprehend, let alone endure. Michael Jackson had been famous longer than most people are alive. From age 5, his every move was scrutinized, his every decision debated, his every appearance analyzed. The child who had charmed audiences on The Ed Sullivan Show had grown into a man who couldn't leave his home without creating international incidents. Those close to Michael described his perfectionism as both his greatest strength and his most dangerous weakness. He would rehearse dance moves until his feet bled. He would record vocals dozens of times seeking the perfect take. This dedication had created masterpieces, but it had also created an impossible standard that grew harder to maintain with each passing year. By 2009, Michael was facing enormous financial pressure. Despite earning hundreds of millions throughout his career, legal settlements, lavish spending, and complex business deals had left him deeply in debt. The This Is It concerts weren't just a comeback, they were a financial necessity. Decades of intensive performing had taken a severe physical toll. Old injuries from elaborate dance routines caused chronic pain. The stress of constant public scrutiny had manifested in various health issues, and the pressure to maintain his iconic appearance had led to numerous surgical procedures and treatments. Perhaps most tragically, Michael's fame had created an isolation that left him vulnerable to those who might exploit his trust. Surrounded by employees, advisors, and medical professionals, he was paradoxically alone, unable to trust who genuinely cared for his well-being versus who saw him as a source of income. The medication that killed Michael Jackson, propofol, reveals the most disturbing aspect of his final years: how a legitimate medical tool became the center of a deadly dependency. Propofol is a remarkable drug when used properly. It provides rapid, controlled anesthesia for surgical procedures, allowing patients to wake up quickly with minimal side effects. In operating rooms, monitored by trained anesthesiologists with full resuscitation equipment, it's relatively safe. But Michael wasn't using it for surgery. He was using it to sleep, turning his bedroom into an improvised operating room every night. This represented a fundamental misunderstanding of both the drug and the nature of sleep itself. What Michael was getting wasn't sleep. It was unconsciousness. Propofol doesn't provide the restorative brain activity that natural sleep delivers. Instead of solving his insomnia, it was likely making it worse, creating a cycle where he needed the drug to lose consciousness, but couldn't achieve genuine rest. How did this happen? The answer reveals a disturbing network of medical professionals willing to provide dangerous treatments to celebrity patients. Michael's wealth and fame had created access to medications and procedures that would never be available to ordinary patients, access that proved deadly. Investigation revealed that Michael had relationships with numerous physicians, many of whom were prescribing medications without knowledge of what others were providing. The normal safeguards that prevent dangerous drug interactions, pharmacy monitoring, medical record sharing, specialist coordination, had completely broken down. Michael Jackson's death wasn't just the result of one doctor's poor judgment, It was the inevitable outcome of multiple system failures that had been building for years. The entertainment industry had created impossible demands. Michael was expected to perform at peak levels while dealing with chronic pain, anxiety, and exhaustion. When he struggled, the solution wasn't rest or proper medical care. It was more medication to keep him functional. The massive financial stakes of the This Is It tour created additional pressure. With millions of dollars in ticket sales, production costs, and contractual obligations, Michael couldn't simply cancel or postpone when his health deteriorated. Too many people depended on the tour's success. The medical establishment failed Michael in profound ways. Doctors who should have prioritized his health instead competed to become his preferred physician. Normal medical protocols were abandoned in favor of customer service. The phrase, "the patient is always right," replaced "first, do no harm." Perhaps most tragically, many people around Michael knew he was struggling with medication dependency, but no one successfully intervened. Whether due to financial interests, fear of losing access, or simple denial, the warning signs were ignored until it was too late. Michael's case highlighted a broader problem in celebrity healthcare, a culture where wealthy patients could essentially purchase whatever medical treatments they desired, regardless of safety or appropriateness. Normal medical safeguards were viewed as obstacles to overcome rather than protections to maintain. Dr. Conrad Murray's trial in 2011 provided a window into the final months of Michael Jackson's life, a window that revealed systematic medical negligence and shocking disregard for patient safety. Prosecutors presented devastating evidence. Murray had administered propofol without proper equipment, had left Michael unmonitored for extended periods, had delayed calling for emergency help, and had even made phone calls while supposedly monitoring a patient under anesthesia. Medical experts testified that Murray's treatment of Michael violated every standard of care. Using propofol for insomnia was inappropriate. Administering it in a home setting was dangerous. Leaving the patient unmonitored was potentially fatal. Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison. But many felt this didn't address the broader systemic issues that had enabled Michael's death. Subsequent civil lawsuits revealed even more disturbing details about Michael's final months. Evidence emerged of other doctors who had provided inappropriate treatments, of a medical culture that prioritized celebrity patient satisfaction over safety, and of warning signs that had been ignored by multiple professionals. The trial established legal responsibility, but it couldn't undo the tragedy or address the underlying problems that had made it possible. Michael Jackson was gone, and his death had exposed dangerous flaws in how the medical system treats celebrity patients. Behind all the medical evidence and legal proceedings was a more fundamental tragedy, a human being who had been consumed by the very fame that had made him beloved worldwide. Michael Jackson died leaving behind 3 children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, who lost their father to a system that had failed to protect him. His family lost a son, brother, and uncle, whose struggles with fame and medication had been hidden behind public facades. Michael's story reveals the unique isolation that comes with global fame. Surrounded by people but unable to trust their motivations. Wealthy enough to buy anything except genuine privacy or normal human relationships. Famous enough that every personal struggle became public entertainment. Perhaps most tragically, Michael's death represented the final chapter in a life that had never known normalcy. The child who had missed ordinary childhood experiences had become an adult who couldn't achieve even basic human needs, like sleep, without medical intervention. Michael's death forced uncomfortable questions about our entertainment culture. How much do we demand from our celebrities? What responsibility do we bear as consumers of their art and their personal struggles? When does our fascination with stars become complicity in their exploitation? In the years since his death, Michael's children have grown up largely outside the spotlight, a conscious choice that perhaps reflects lessons learned from their father's experience. Their privacy and normalcy represent something Michael could never achieve for himself. More than a decade after Michael Jackson's death, the dark secrets that killed him remain largely unaddressed in celebrity culture. Prescription drug abuse among celebrities continues to make headlines. The pressure for constant performance and perfection has only intensified in the social media age. Medical professionals still struggle with how to treat famous patients without compromising their professional ethics. The entertainment industry still prioritizes revenue over artist well-being. Financial pressures continue to drive performers to extremes. The medical system still lacks adequate safeguards against doctor shopping and prescription abuse among wealthy patients. Prince's death from fentanyl overdose in 2016. Whitney Houston's death involving prescription drugs in 2012. Mac Miller's overdose in 2018. The pattern continues, suggesting that Michael's death didn't serve as the wake-up call many hoped it would. While there have been some improvements, better prescription monitoring systems, increased awareness of addiction issues, more discussion of mental health, the fundamental pressures that killed Michael Jackson remain largely unchanged. Each preventable celebrity death represents not just individual tragedy, but our collective failure to learn from past mistakes. The dark secrets behind these deaths often follow similar patterns: isolation, pressure, inadequate medical care, and systems that prioritize profit over human well-being. Despite the tragic circumstances of his death, Michael Jackson's artistic legacy continues to inspire new generations of performers, musicians, and dancers worldwide. His innovations in music, dance, and visual storytelling remain influential today. Modern pop stars still reference his moves, his videos, and his approach to performance. His humanitarian work, often overshadowed by controversies, helped millions of people around the world. Projects like the This Is It documentary and posthumous albums have allowed fans to connect with Michael's artistry, while serving as reminders of what was lost. These releases show glimpses of the creativity that continued burning within him, even during his final troubled months. Perhaps most importantly, Michael's death has sparked important conversations about prescription drug abuse, medical ethics, and the treatment of celebrities by both the medical establishment and society at large. His children, now adults, have chosen to honor their father's memory while building their own lives largely outside the entertainment industry. Their choice to pursue education and privacy over fame might represent the wisdom learned from their father's experience. The dark secret behind Michael Jackson's death wasn't hidden in some shadowy conspiracy. It was hiding in plain sight, in a culture that demands perfection from imperfect human beings, in a medical system that sometimes forgets the humanity of its patients, and in our collective willingness to consume celebrity without considering the cost. Michael Jackson died not because of his music, his dancing, or his artistry, the things that made him beloved. He died because of the systems and pressures that surrounded those gifts, systems that treated him more as a product than as a person. His story serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked fame, inadequate medical oversight, and the isolation that can come with extraordinary success. But it also reminds us that behind every public figure is a human being with genuine struggles, real pain, and fundamental needs for connection, rest, and care. Today, when we hear Billie Jean or watch someone attempt the moonwalk, we're experiencing the enduring power of Michael Jackson's artistry. His music outlives the tragedy of his death, reminding us why he captured the world's imagination in the first place. The King of Pop. His greatest legacy might not be his records or his dance moves. It might be the lessons his death taught us about treating each other with dignity, providing proper medical care, and remembering that no amount of fame or success can replace basic human compassion. Michael Jackson, 1958-2009. Forever the King of Pop. Forever missed. Forever a reminder that we must do better. If you or someone you know is struggling with prescription drug dependency, help is available. Resources and support information are provided in the description below. Thank you for joining us in remembering Michael Jackson's life and learning from the circumstances of his death. Subscribe for more respectful explorations of music history and the human stories behind the headlines. What other stories from music history would you like us to explore? Let us know in the comments below.